of our business. It is a small component of what we do. What a lot of folks don't know is the complexity and breadth of technology and innovation that goes in behind that. So I'll start off with this video and then have a couple of talking points here for you guys. Here's hoping this works. This is the stuff that everybody loves, is the big green trucks.
Strong, competitive, doing everything we can to improve safety, productivity, and efficiency without compromising standards. Conducting ourselves for the betterment of the community, regardless of what others might do. We do these things day in and day out. Remain respected, independent company, and a good place to work. Not just for today, but for the future. With a can-do spirit that's older than Oklahoma, Police on top, police on trusted, police on the liberals.
All right, I'll stop sharing the screen here. So, a couple of things about the promo video. So you guys are all now indoctrinated and have drank the Kool-Aid. We'll have tattoos out here later for everybody to get as well. So obviously being a 120-year-old company, we've had a little bit of an evolution. Everything you've seen within that video is connected via technology in some way, shape, or form. What that means for us is we have a data point coming from that thing in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's automated controls at our quarries, whether it's telematics on our heavy equipment, hundreds of thousands of data points that our business, when we talk to them, wants to do something with. For us, we're on a little bit of a data journey. So we are aspiring to be a data-driven organization. And what does that mean, right? So we have this unique situation where we talk to the business and say, hey, tell us what data you want. And what do you think their response is? All of it. Exactly right. And we go, okay, well, I'm not sure how we accomplish that. So we're in this maturation process of, instead of asking what data they want, we're asking them, what are you trying to do? What are your problems you're trying to solve? How do we use data to calculate labor workforce efficiencies? And first and foremost, how do we educate our business folks on data literacy? So we'll have folks here that have been, it's pretty common for folks to have been here for 20, 25, 30 years. So the concept of we've always done it that way is so ingrained that it's not just second nature, it's first nature for them. So having any conversation about data and how to use it requires a lot of patience today. And so it's a learning process with our business. Jeff and his team have taken us down a path, just like many other organizations. We had hundreds of disparate data sources. We had, folks using Excel. We had folks literally still writing stuff on paper, and that was their data source, right? We're being down a path now where we're saying, okay, we need to sort of consolidate data into a warehouse, data lake, and Snowflake, and start consuming it out of that. We need to start implementing some master data management. We need to clean up our integrations. We need a single source of truth of data, which is the most difficult thing ever in the world to accomplish. And you find me somebody who has accomplished that, and I will hire them in a heartbeat. They don't exist. Where are we going? So we're in a process of really digitizing our world. What I mean by that is, because we're such an old company, everything was paper-based. Paper tickets, paper receipts, paper invoices, paper work orders. We're turning that really around into, let's digitize it. Folks are so used to walking around with mobile devices all day long. We had this concept of our truck drivers, they drive trucks, they don't know technology. And we've sort of pushed back on that and said, every one of them carries a mobile phone. Every single one of them jumps on Amazon at night to order stuff. They know technology, right? And really utilizing that as a benchmark of, we can have them do things on their mobile devices. We can have them do things on tablets. We're doing a couple of things. You'll get to see the dispatch center downstairs, I believe, as part of the tour, Jeff. Okay. So we dispatch, I'm going to get this number wrong. I believe we have about 500 trucks. Is that right? Ish. That we dispatch throughout Oklahoma on a day in, day out basis. Everything from pouring concrete for a single person's driveway to lining 30 trucks up to re-pour a runway at Tinker Air Force Base, and everything in between. If there's a building piece of concrete here in Oklahoma, high likelihood it has one of our products in it. We've digitized a lot of that. So through dispatch, knowing exactly where a truck is, where it's going, estimated time, product, state of the product in the back of the truck, how long a truck is waiting there, which then impacts the quality of the product. So again, all data points that we look at and measure. So you can have a truck go out to a job site, the general contractor goes, I'm not ready for you guys yet. It'll be another 2 hours. Truck's literally parked there for another 2 hours while that drum's turning, and that drum only has a certain amount of time to turn before that product starts to go south a little bit. So all data points that we measure and make decisions based off of. Talked about telematics from our heavy equipment that we saw up there. So whether it's Caterpillar or Komatsu, they give us an awful lot of data about the utilization of our heavy equipment at our plants and quarries. A couple of the things that we're starting to experiment with. So we have some trials on the horizon for the use of autonomous vehicles in our quarries, which is a little scary, but it's actually one of the safest places to be able to trial autonomous vehicles, for the simple reason being is there's really no other vehicles out there but ones that we own and control, and the pathways are all reasonably straightforward. Caterpillar has some interesting ideas that they want to do in the autonomous vehicle space. And again, all of that is data driven. So you're streaming data from these vehicles and streaming data back to them to make decisions on where the vehicle goes, its load sizes, if it's overloaded, what does it do? Lots of decisions. One of the last things that I'll talk about, and I'll show this video, is at one of our larger facilities, Richard Spur, down towards Elgin, Oklahoma, we had this process where you bring your large truck and trailer in and you want a bed full of material. Basically, you would come in through the scale at the front, you'd get a ticket, you'd have to go to a pile of your material and wait in line for somebody to come along with a piece of heavy equipment to load it into the back of your trailer. On average, that process would take anywhere from an hour to an hour and 45 minutes. We've created this concept of what we call an automated loadout facility. So Chris and his team are involved with that, Michelle and her team, and then Jeff's team will get a lot of the data associated with it. Basically, it is a truck comes in, read the pike pass, so the OTA to get data. We know who the trucker is. We know what the truck is. We know what his gross vehicle weight is. He keeps on going straight back to the automated loadout, so he doesn't go to the pile. He pulls in. We have guides for him going in there. He parks. He pulls a little lever to signify that he's ready for that load, and the load automatically dumps out of the bins. The process went from an hour, hour and a half to between 9 and 15 minutes. So that's significant for the business. What it means is we've doubled the number of trucks, number of loads we can serve through that place on a day in, day out basis. On a good day, Michelle, I believe when we were out there, it was somewhere between 500 and 600 trucks per day is what we're now doing through that facility. This sort of again, no good deed goes unpunished, right? The things we didn't think about is, so we've doubled what we're putting into these trucks, but we're still only producing the same amount of material at that facility. So you have to be careful with technology and how you innovate is, what are the consequences of the actions I have done to innovate? In this case, it was, oh crap, we need to ramp up production significantly at this location. And do we have the capacity to do that? And how do we solve that problem? You'll get to see this loadout here in this video. I'll share my screen again. The loadout also brings its own problems as well. So we discovered fraud issues. So because it was so fast, not everybody in the world likes to play nice. So we had some truckers who would come through 9 minutes, they'd get a load, they'd go out, they'd drive down the street, they'd dump that load, immediately turn around, come right back in, come right back through, using the same ticket, getting another load. So they basically double what they got without it having been paid for. So when we discovered that, we basically pushed a time limit and said, hey, you can't come back within 30 minutes because you're really not putting that load somewhere other than down the street to go get another load for free. Lots of things we discovered like that. So let me share my screen.
We'll see the loadout, but is that like usually like dry products so they could come back and pick that stuff up later?
Yep. So it is all dry product. So whether it's rock, sand, you name it, it's all dry product. It's fascinating when you combine sort of our aggregate industry with the trucking industry. So, and the regulations around it. So, for example, in Oklahoma interstates, you cannot be over 80,000 pounds gross vehicle weight to go on the interstate. Oklahoma back roads, do what you want. So we'll have truckers come through, and if they're, after they get a load, they go back out through the scale house to get weighed again. If they're over 80,000 pounds, some of them will sort of go, hey, like I need to dump some of this. This isn't right. Or some of them will just go, nah, I'm good. And it's entirely on them as truckers at that point. So we push the onus of responsibility onto the trucking companies here. Let's see if this video works. Yep. And I'll talk through a little bit of it here as it's going. So what you're seeing is basically the piles of materials. These are our conveyor belts to move materials from the piles and then over into our automated loadout facility. So as we blow up rock faces, sort of create materials, crush rock, we then have to move it around based on what the material is to get it to certain locations. So this that you see is the automated loadout facility. Right now we have 3 guys working this loadout, and it's basically at this point it's okay, they're working exceptions. So software errors we run into, of course it stops. Driver errors, we'll give it a chance to catch up. This is a 4K video these guys did. I'll just,
I guess it's drone
there's, yeah. So again, we talk about innovation. So one of the other things that we do here is you ask the question, how do you measure inventory and how much is on a pile? So we actually do it with drones today. So we do drone flyovers and basically take a square measurement and height measurement, and we get a sort of rough calculation of how much is actually in that pile. I'll stop this and just sort of walk through it. So these are the bays that our trucks go through. So they come through the front entrance, Pike Pass reader figures out who they are. They keep on going. They get directed to either bay 1, 2, or 3. They pull up, stop sign. They get a ticket. And it reads them, prints a ticket for them. They pull the ticket. Then they pull themselves in. Once they get in and lined up within sort of the 2 lanes here, we have cameras all around it. They get to watch a TV screen, so they see their trailer lined up with the bins, and then they're instructed when they think they're lined up. Basically, it's like a emergency brake on a train. So a wire handle, they pull it, and the materials are dumped out. See if I can jump to it here. There's a lot of sort of, I call it fluffy drone footage. Here we go. Yeah.
Did you all start building this out?
When did Spur start? Last year. So this guy's got his ticket. He's pulling in, basically fill up his load. And then a red light tells him where to stop. So we automate the filling of the bins with the material. He pulls that string when he's ready. And then it dumps the materials into his bin. And that is it. It's literally that fast for these guys now. So they don't sit in lines. They're not waiting for heavy equipment loaders to come load them up. We partnered with GW Systems to do this on all of the hydraulic pieces out there. It's not without its challenges by any means, right? No project is perfect. We run into problems today with truck drivers that they may have been through the process 2 or 3 times, but they're just still not getting it. Or what we will have a truck show up with the same truck that's been through the process, but a different truck driver. Or a truck shows up, we've read it, it's like it's this truck, it's this trailer, we know the weight, but he's went and put a different trailer on it. So it's a completely different gross vehicle weight. So all things that we're figuring out as we go with this. Let me stop sharing here. So this is for sure, when we talk about data and where we're going, it is for sure a maturation journey for us. Are we doing sort of any sexy things in the AI and ML space today? I mean, I could argue yes, but really not really. We want to get the basics right? We want to get our org set to really think about how do I use data to make decisions, and then we can start introducing sort of more advanced concepts as we go. So that's all I have. Do you guys have any questions about Dolese, where we're going, before I let the real rock stars take over here and walk through stuff? Great question. So the question is, for those on Teams, on this journey that we're on, what have we done to encourage a culture of data use? So there's kind of 2 approaches you can take there. You can either tell the business, hey, you're going to use this, we're going to give it to you, and here you go. That is a recipe for failure. It just is, because the business will always be, man, IT's doing things to me again, right? Or the approach we've taken is really working in partnership with them to ask questions of, hey, we've have some data, we want to sit down with you guys and sort of walk through. We have a hypothesis, we have some analytics, and we believe the data is telling us this. Can you guys help us shine some light on what it really is? The data itself is only going to tell you so much of a story, and every organization will have tribal knowledge that fills in the gaps that you go, okay, now I understand. And with the folks here, we've really identified a handful of what we call data champions, folks who are more data literate than others. And they're the ones, I mean, it's really how you do innovation, right? It's sort of that if you can get between 14 to 16% of your org doing the things you want them to do, the rest will just come along naturally as hey, what are they doing? How do I do that? So we're really pushing to get a small subset of folks having these conversations about repeat messages on data, and really letting them drive the culture versus us. Yeah, it's a good question. That's where these folks will come into that role. So there's a million analytics tools out there that we could pick, we could go down. Everybody knows Microsoft, right? And so everybody's comfortable for the most part in that Microsoft world. When we start throwing around other analytics tools and their names and concepts, our business users will just, their eyes will glaze over and they'll, I have no idea what you're talking about. So with Power BI, we give them the ability to not just see their own data, but they then can start modeling it, right? And this is sort of it's a terrible concept of baby steps, right? Every organization, Excel runs the world. It just does. And every organization has Excel users, power Excel users who've taken Excel and turned it into nothing more than Power BI Lite, right? And so you want to help, those folks are awesome. You want to help them sort of move into the next step of, hey, there are other tools that are more powerful. And so that's what really we're doing with our folks here. We have applications that are built on Excel that they're just, they grow and grow and grow, and we discover them and go, huh, okay, that's cool. Let's not keep that around. Yeah. What else? Any other questions?
Has data integration been a problem?
Huge problem, massive problem. We talk about it every day. Because we're such an old company, we have integrations here from our old mainframe days. We have integrations that these folks, when we look at the code, like we just look at it and go, we have no idea what this is or what it does. So, you're literally, you're trying to, perform surgery with a hammer and an axe, right? So one of our goals and objectives is really, how do we look at those integrations and start talking about, do we refactor them, do we rewrite them, or do we replace them, right? And we're starting to go down that. I'd prefer to just sort of retire them and get them out of the environment. But yeah, integrations are a huge issue. And it's a business problem too, because the business sees, hey, just write a quick integration for my problem, get it taken care of. And we've done that in the past, but it just keeps adding to this pile of technical debt. So what we're starting to do now is actually saying no to the business and telling them, hey, we're not going to do that because of these reasons. And this is actually a better fit, we believe. We just recently had an integration, an old one that we wanted to move away from it onto a more commercial off-the-shelf version. We switched over. There were obviously issues. The first reaction of the business was, oh crap, this isn't working. Move everything back to the way it was. And we had to go, no, we're not going back. This will be painful for a few days here, but just bear with us. So it is a painful journey for sure. Yeah. Anything else?
Like reading of the pipe test, can anybody do that?
Yep.
Special arrangements that make it OTA?
Nope. I believe I'm looking at Jeff here. I think anybody can read OTA's database. Working with the state of Oklahoma is interesting. It's probably an understatement. ODOT, for example. So we're starting to look at some potential integrations with ODOT. Today, in 2022, ODOT just came out with, hey, we built this really cool thing called an API that you guys can now connect to. Like, huh, okay, that's awesome. Yeah. So yeah, and it really depends on which state agency. OTA is a little further ahead than ODOT. A lot of those places, you just kind of have to tell them, hey, here's what we want. And usually they'll just laugh and go, yeah, no, we don't do that. And so sometimes we'll have to write manual integrations to do screen scrapes from places just to go get data. But yeah, I mean, we prefer to automate as much of our data ingestion as we can, but it's not always automated. Yeah. Any other questions? Nope. All right. I'll let Jeff and Sean and Brandon take over here. I'll jump off this for a second.
was SSRS based. Everything was disparate data sources. We had SSRS reports looking here and over here and God knows where, saying different things. Recognized that this was a problem. So we brought on HashMap. Some of you guys might be familiar with those guys to help us solve these problems that we're having. Came up with the solution of Snowflake. So we have an implementation of Snowflake as our EDW. We use, at the time, it was a Tunity replicate. Clicks recently, well, not so recently, acquired them. So we have that pulling data into our EDW. When we first started looking at that solution, we were mostly on-prem. A lot of our data sources were on-prem. As times have changed, we've kind of shifted towards a lot of API-based solutions for our business, which comes with its own set of challenges. We've been using Azure Data Factory for a lot of those historically, which again comes with its own set of headaches and lots of hands-on. So where does Power BI fit in all that? Well, that basically sits on top of our EDW and does our visualizations for executive management, sales management, operations managers, and that's just growing. So that was a journey that started 2019, I think. It was just before the pandemic hit, I want to say. So that effort took some time to get implemented where we have a solid foundation of data. And that's still growing. We're still finding new sources and things to pull into our EDW that we can use. People are coming up with ideas. So we saw pictures of our trucks, our mixer trucks. We've got sensors that sit in those to read what that mix looks like. Is it too dry? Is it too wet? Do we need to add stuff to it? All that is data that we can utilize. Things like that we're constantly adding to our EDW. So then it's a matter of, having the creativity to say, what can we do with that? And that's where Power BI comes into play. So that's really about it. Anybody has any questions they'd like to throw at me? I will attempt to answer.
I was just going to ask about how the team grew. So you mentioned that kind of first we brought in HashMap to find a solution to modernize the on-prem SQL server. And so, where'd you go from there? Did you hire a bunch of data engineers, or did you focus on Power BI first?
Jeff laughing at. Yeah, so David and Jeff and I were here when that project started. And that was basically left to me. So how did we grow the team? We hired Brandon, who has helped take on my load of this process, and we're still growing. So that's a journey we're still on.
You guys are a small team and you're all generalists.
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. Data engineering, data architecting, data visualization, BI developer.
What's the next step? You get more buy-in, so you can argue to get more people.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, and that's kind of where we're at right now. The business is starting to get a taste of the good stuff. So yeah, that's kind of where we're seeing things go, especially with now that we've got Brandon kicking out some good stuff, really getting some heads thinking, cogs turning. So yeah, it's been good. It's been a journey.
We're about the same place. I think Elliot started at the same time building some similar capabilities to where right where you guys are.
Oh, fun. Where are you guys?
We're in American.
Okay. You're right there.
Yeah. We work with some other companies that aren't in that building that all this stuff was new to them in 2019 also.
Wow.
So it's interesting to see that we're like at the same spot.
No, yeah,
They're
that's,
starting to get interested in it, get the vibe.
that is good to know too, because a lot of I have gotten the sense from speaking with a lot of folks that do this, that we're kind of behind. And we've always been kind of behind. So yeah, that's.
Well, yeah, we're all behind, but still, just because we started getting the adoption late, but I think that 2 years or however many years it's been into it, that we're at the same spot. So I think that's a good sign.
Have you guys experienced some cultural challenges with that as well?
And
Yeah.
some are have a lot better uptake than others. Just love their function.
That's true. And that's one of the benefits of Power BI that we found is it's a pretty smooth, I wouldn't say smooth, but you can transition it in ways that you can take advantage of those Excel expertise that people have.
How are you doing? I'm sorry, go ahead. Well, I was curious, I got a couple of questions for you. One of them is just about your whole architecture. I'm curious how you've been staging data in raw form in data lake, in Snowflake, taking that and kind of enriching it, and putting it into the relational dimensional forms in EW.
Yeah, so we've got 2 databases set up essentially in our EDW. We've got a raw layer, which is where all of our data gets ingested. And then we have a curated, which is where we build our models. We use dbt to write models. And then those models are then used to basically drive our visualizations.
And the second question was there a moment when you guys were looking at Power BI where you're like, it was like the light bulb moment where you're like, wow, this represents a huge amount of value. Was it like a visualization you guys put together where the company was like, what is this problem?
So the company was kind of used to SSRS before, which very tabular. It's not, there's no interactivity. So that's kind of what everybody was used to. I think what really attracted folks to Power BI was the ability to have this interaction with the data as opposed to just looking at it, telling the story. What we found also was a lot of the SSRS reports that were getting kicked out to folks were just taking that into Excel and manipulating it, creating visuals based on that. And it's like, well, we can take that step further, take away your manual processes and do that for you. So that's kind of been some of the things that we've found with Power BI that have been really good.
How are you managing that connection of Snowflake to Power BI? Are you doing a lot of import or are you direct query?
Import. It's all import.
Are you just can I ask how you're managing your Snowflake like cost? There's different ways of approaching that, right? Are you
Sure.
trying to allocate that to departments or just let it be on all the time?
Yeah, I think that's something that we're going to figure out as we grow. It hasn't really been a concern yet. But I think we're going to get to a place where we're going to want to see what costs are for operations versus sales versus, OT or some of these other places in the company that are utilizing it. But right now, it hasn't really been a concern.
So you just have one warehouse. Does it ever go to sleep or does it stay on?
Well, so we do have separate warehouses for like ingestion and BI. So we do, and what we found is a lot of our cost is ingestion right now. Most of it is. And I think that's probably replicate. Yeah, it's pretty heavy, especially if you've got CDC turned on. Yeah.
You want to share more about your
We are not using Compose. It's just replicate. So Compose, is that the modeling tool?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not actually using that. I believe did we get that? I don't think we did. We're actually using DBT to model our data.
Can you talk a little bit more about, with data out of?
Sure. So that just feeds our raw layer. It goes in as it is. And that's going to be our ERP, our operational systems for concrete, ready mixes, or our ready mix and aggregate. Those are our on-prem data sources. So that goes into Snowflake with change data capture. So we're getting real time, as it changes. That lands in the raw layer of Snowflake. And from that point, so that data, we don't scrub it. It goes in as it is. The modeling is where that happens. So we build our models, deploy those out to our curated database, and then that's where things get consumed. So I don't know if that answers your question or. Okay.
Keep replicating data out of. We got that, but.
That's it. Yeah, I think that's where Compose comes in, and we're just not using that. Hand it off to you, Brent.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, a really big thanks to Alan and Sean, Jeff, and all these, Brandon, all these folks from Dolese. Chris, some I haven't met yet even, I've seen coming in and out. So thanks for sharing that with us. Yeah, Dolese, it's safe to say that presentation rocked. Sorry, I couldn't help. But wow, I got more reaction than I expected. Thanks. Yeah, no, thanks. Really, it really is helpful to hear about another company's journey, because you're like, okay, I see where we are relative to that. Some places ahead, some places behind. Get new ideas, like maybe I need to check out DBT. Something that Alan said reminded me of a really helpful concept, just in general, when it comes to this kind of data. And we try to integrate systems as BI people, right? So there's this idea of the theory of constraints, that it's basically the what's your weakest link in the chain, right? If I improve one particular area, that doesn't necessarily improve all the areas around it. Sounds like they experienced that with the automated loadout. Like, okay, now it takes 9 to 15 minutes to load a truck. Oh, we can't actually make that much aggregate or whatever it is, right, in that amount of time. So it's a cool theory. It applies a lot to our BI world, where we have to do that. Okay, we can replicate the data quickly, but how quickly can we get it modeled, right? And that's the constraint sometimes. So kind of a cool related concept there. That said, it's time for me to introduce Jeremy. And honestly, I just have an introduction slide, so I won't worry about getting all hooked up. But Jeremy, if you want to go ahead and come on up and get hooked up. Before he starts, I will mention that Chick-fil-A is going to arrive, should be about 11:45 was the time I picked. So just as soon as you're done, or if Q&A goes on. Yeah, that sounds good, actually. You want to take it? Yeah, you know what? We usually do have a break built in. So let's just take a 5-minute break while Jeremy gets set up. Come back at 11:18, 11:20. Yeah, but want to let you know that lunch is on the way. Do you have anything to say there, Jeremy? And I forgot to also mention, Wi-Fi is free. You're probably already on it, but there's a guest network. And when you join that DS something guest network, just say I accept. You're on Wi-Fi. I should have mentioned that at the beginning. Okay, see you guys in about 5 minutes. Cool. This will actually I could let you join on Teams so you could record your presentation.
Okay.
Sorry, man.
Let me.
If I email it to you, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because and I need to run
an
it.
adapter.
I need to run it real quick.
Okay, yeah, please. No problem, man. Sounds good. Yeah. I think he is. I think he just had, he was going to be in and out a little bit today. No HDMI. What is that? Is that a thing we can use? That's not what I think it is.
Out there, okay, this felt like, yeah, you just felt very, it's very. So we don't like it, I have any art up on the walls yet or anything. But that was the. There's two things. Everything in the way, we probably move. Other things happen, they should have.
I heard that in the bathroom. Yeah, sorry, Teams people. Yeah, there was music. I just didn't notice the music till I got in the bathroom. And then I was like,
Anything from about the 60s.
yes, yeah, I thought it was kind of hip. That's what we'll do. I got it. I got it.
It's doing really well. It's good line. Right now, I actually fired myself. Like kept better. Double their stock development. That was one of the things. I was probably the best step editor. That's right. Not be the guy. It's all there still. It's one still. Quickly figured out. Yes, so it's some stuff right for a while. And now that it's a very good business. Like just from.
So I realized that if you share your screen, I'll be the HDMI conduit through the internet, through the miracle of the internet.
Okay.
I guess I emailed you a link to join the Teams meeting.
Okay, so that is, can you email it to my personal
Yes, sir.
email, jst.jdennis@gmail?
jst.jdennis.
Yeah.
Nice, man. Cool. jst.jdennis. Should be that one, that DSCC guest thing.
Oh, okay. Should I get on that
You
one?
can hotspot it if you want, but I thought you can use their Wi-Fi either way.
Oh, I'm already on.
Sure, that works.
Okay.
So it should just be in your Gmail.
Okay. Let's try again.
And I don't know if you will want to use the clicker. You'll probably be more up here demoing, probably.
Yeah, I'll be I'll be demoing.
Sounds good.
I do have a little slide deck, but it's not much.
Yeah, I just do it on the browser. It's
That's right.
It did not want to do it in Firefox. It said you have to use Edge.
That's the edge or nothing.
I did not.
You could probably turn this off, yeah.
Probably this one will be on, so. Oh yeah, it's on the screen over there.
So it's okay.
It's actually up, but it's just up on the other screen. So I think if you share, then I'll be seeing your screen. Plus it'll be recorded. Take a video and cut out this video.
And it's.
So I should be sharing now.
I think it's catching up here. It's starting to. I don't know why it's showing up yet. Yeah, let's see if it's showing up. Yeah, just try resharing again. If you wouldn't mind.
Okay.
Mr. Edge, does he have access? It's just that nothing's coming through quite yet.
Let's see.
Are they,
Share desktop.
It's like every
Entire screen. Share.
So it's popping up with the J there. Sometimes it just takes, a few seconds to kind of stream on through it.
yeah.
Maybe it would be better if I connect to this Wi-Fi here.
Might be, depending on your plan and stuff, if you don't mind giving it a shot.
Okay. Okay. DSC guest.
I think that's like Dolese Support Service Center or something like that.
Okay.
And you have to check that little box in the middle and then say connect. And it's not screaming fast either, but it might be a little more stable.
Yeah, maybe that'll get us there.
You're back on. Oh, I gotta admit you. Oh, I see. You admitted yourself last time. Good idea.
All right.
My security firewall. Come on.
Let's.
Oh yeah, I see your screen now, buddy.
Got it.
Looks like that was the magic secret sauce there. All right, cool. Get rid of this chat window. I should have done this over here.
A little bit of a delay there. But
Yeah, just a little bit. But I think it's coming through okay.
yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, man.
Yeah. Thank you.
Open here.
You ready? Yeah.
You want to reconvene or shall I? I guess I already kind of introduced you.
Yeah.
All right, folks, we'll go ahead and get this session started here really quick. Brent mentioned, I'm Jeremy Dennis. I'm a co-lead of our Oklahoma Power BI user group. I've been using Power BI for, wow, I guess since 2016. I think that was about a year or two after it came out. And I first got into Power BI, and what I saw that kind of blew my mind was, wow, I can connect to an Excel file and a database at the same time and put all of this stuff together. This is like a game changer in one spot. Since then, I have gone on to hold various positions, implementing Power BI consultant. Now I am a senior BI engineer at Cherokee Federal. Cherokee Federal is one of the main business units of Cherokee Nation businesses. So there's Cherokee Nation Entertainment, that's kind of hotels and casinos for Cherokee Nation, and then Cherokee Federal. And what we do is contracting for the federal government. We do literally everything from construction and engineering and manufacturing, logistics, distribution, consulting. I mean, if the government has a contract out there for somebody to do it, Cherokee Federal will bid on it. So, CFED was started around 2010, and so they've got a little over a decade of data now, and I was surprised to get there and learn that they had their data estate was essentially transactional systems, and then the reporting feature Cognos that was in their ERP. And so I was like, oh, wow, we've got a huge opportunity here to, bring them into the 21st century, right? And so, where you guys, Dolese, where you guys are at, I think really a lot of businesses are right where you're at in this journey, where we're trying to kind of ramp things up and move to that next level in our data maturity. So that's just a little bit about me. I will be talking about Python in Power BI today. So show of hands, who's familiar with Python? Yeah, oh, great. That's awesome. Okay, good deal. You're never really sure what the audience is going to be like whenever you're speaking to them. So I'm glad to know that everyone here is really familiar with it. Knowing that, I guess could probably skip this slide, but I've got it. So I'll go ahead and dive in. In my view, Python is really the Swiss Army knife of programming languages. If I've got an issue that I can't solve with anything else, I know that I can always fall back to Python and find some custom library out there that somebody has spent time, spent a large part of their life curating, and I can just go, get the advantage of all of their hard work. I love it. If you are not super familiar with Python, obviously python.org is a good place to start. This slide deck will be available to anyone who's viewing this or anybody who's interested, really. And I wanted to include a link to this course that's available through MIT. It's their Intro to Computer Programming, to Computer Science and Programming using Python. This was the very first programming course that I took, and I loved it. It really kind of sparked my love for Python. So, why use Power BI in Python? As I was researching this, and I really got kind of inspired by an article that I read by a gentleman who talked about using it, Power BI in Python. So I already had this love of Python. I used it for web scraping. and a few different other things that I'd done in just personal projects. And I knew that integration into Power BI existed, but I never really had paid much attention to it. There are a lot of features in Power BI that I've never used, right? This was one of them. And so I read this article on it and I thought, wow, this is really simple using Python and Power BI. So I'm going to give a talk on it. And in researching this, I kind of came up with these couple of few reasons why you might be interested in using it. So Python libraries, I guess, as you may all be aware, give you the ability to do some really advanced analytics. And whenever I say advanced analytics, I kind of break things down into descriptive analytics, right? What happened in the past, predictive analytics. So I'm going to take what happened in the past and try and say what's going to happen in the future. And then prescriptive analytics, not only what's going to happen in the future, but here's what you should do about it, right? Weather forecast is the best prescriptive analytic example that I can give. And so Python gives you the ability. Power BI is great with descriptive analytics, and they even have some great predictive analytic capabilities as well, right? Our forecast that we kind of talked about. There is a clustering algorithm called KNN, or K nearest neighbors, that kind of will group your data into nice little clusters, right? That comes right out of the box in Power BI. That would be considered maybe a more advanced analytic capability. But with Python, you really have, it gives you all of the control that you could possibly want, right? So if you're talking to a data scientist, very likely they're going to be using R and or Python. There are a lot of capabilities that overlap between those two languages, but that was the first one, advanced analytics. The other one that you see here is that the Python libraries that you have access to give you the ability to access new and interesting visualizations that don't just come out of the box with Power BI. So if there was, for example, one of my favorite visualizations is a box and whisker, because it gives you this great, very concise view of the distribution of your data. This is so much information in that one little picture in a box and whisker. You could do that very easily with Python in Power BI. Another one that I'll show an example of here is called a swarm plot. And a swarm plot is similar to a box and whisker. It's really intended to be used for when you have just kind of a few data points. It doesn't scale well when you have tons and tons of data points, but it's meant to be used with one quantitative and one categorical variable. And we'll kind of look at that as well. And then the last one was, Power BI has this list of connectors that I know you all have seen. I don't even know what it's numbering in right now. I know it's above 30. I'm sure the last time I did analysis of it, there was at least 30. I'm sure that there are more now. So huge number of ways that you can connect just right out of the box to different types of data. If there were any other ways that aren't available right now, you can use Python as a data source in Power BI. So you can literally use Python to connect to any type of data that you can imagine. There are some considerations, however. So in my mind, this is one of those things that I don't know is ready for production yet, if that makes sense. So I say that because if you were to put together this really cool Power BI report that includes some Python scripting in it, but you used a custom library that's not supported and you publish it out to the service, then you're going to have issues. In the documentation, I also called this one out here in red. One of the things that I was thinking is going to be really cool with Python, we can use this to connect to APIs. Well, yes, you can. However, the way that I'm reading this, and I could be wrong about it, but this bullet point that's outlined in red right here came straight from the documentation, Microsoft documentation on using Python and Power BI. And the way that I'm reading that is, we're not going to let you connect to an API and publish that out to the service. Again, you can do anything that you want in desktop and it's going to work just fine. But whenever you get ready to publish that out, you're wanting to share that across the organization, I don't know if that's going to be possible yet. So I'm still pretty green on using this feature myself. I would love to hear that I inspired some of you to start using it, and then you go connect to an API and say, Jeremy, you don't know what you're talking about. I did this and it works just fine. So I just wanted to call out a couple of things there. I do have some links also that will take you directly to this documentation so that you can see here are all of the packages that are supported in Power BI. So that's this page right here. And we'll be looking at a number of these today, Seaborn and Matplotlib and Pandas. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump in. There again, this is pretty short slide deck. I like to get into the tool and start using it. So I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to use it as a data source. Just kind of demonstrating some of the different ways that you can go in and get data using Python. And then I'm also going to show you how you can use Python and Power BI to create a custom visualization. So let's talk really quickly about getting Python onto your laptop, right? If we come back over here and go to python.org, and if you're not using Windows, obviously you won't want to use this link. But right here, if I just hover over downloads, we've got the 64-bit installer for Windows. So installing that and then doing it to a location that you know that you can find. Whenever I installed it, it tried to install it into my app data folder. So you have to say, let's do a custom install. So you can say, I want to put it in program files or just wherever you can find it. Another thing that I'll tell you, if you're in Power BI, you can come over to Files and Options and Settings, okay? And right here in our Options menu, we're going to have the Python scripting, okay? And it tells you this is where we're going to look for the Python executable that you just installed. If you don't have it installed, this will be blank, and you can right from within Power BI, we can go and look at how do I install Python, right? And it takes you to this page here. There's a great kind of step-by-step on how do I get started with this. So just so you're aware of that, okay? So I have Python installed on my laptop, and now I'm ready to start working with it. Well, yes and no, okay? If we want to start using Python as a data source, I will come over to Get Data, okay? And just type in Python. Okay, so we've got Python script here. And I'll say connect. And I'm actually going to try and use, let's see here, bear with me for 1 second. I'm going to intentionally have it throw an error so that we can look at, what does that look like? And to do that, I'm going to try using a PyDatasets library. So this link right here takes us to
I guess whenever I was going to show you guys how to use it as a data source, we can use data that are in libraries in Python already. So it's like sample data sets, right? So I'm going to show you that really quickly. But then I'm also going to show you, okay, out on GitHub, there's a bunch of, amazing data sets. Most of those are in JSON format. So I'll show you how to connect to one of those as well. And so we just opened up this little article right here that says, basically, here's some libraries that come with their own built-in data sources that you can connect to, okay? So PyDataset is one that I'm going to try right now. And we are going to, let's see here. So I'm going to say from PyDataset, okay? We can see this right here. From PyDataset, import data. Okay, so I'll say from PyDataset, import data. Okay. And then what I'm going to do, Power BI wants your data to be in a pandas data frame. Okay. If you're not familiar with what that is, a pandas data frame is a SQL table. A SQL table is a sheet in an Excel workbook. Okay. A data frame is just a rectangular shaped data source. Okay. So that's what Power BI expects and wants to see your data come in as. Okay, so I'm going to say data iris. There is an iris data set. So I'm just going to copy this right here. Okay. Well, that's not what I wanted to see. Let's just say df equals data, and I think it said iris. Let's go double check. Yeah. Okay, so I am almost positive this is going to throw an error because I have not installed that PyDataset library. Okay, I don't know if you all can see that, but it's saying no module named PyDataset. This is something that I ran into and I wanted to demonstrate it so that I could show you all, here's how you get around it. So Python comes with a tool called pip, P-I-P. Okay, so if I want to install really any library, we're gonna be real programmers and we're gonna open up our command line, right? Okay, so I'm going to, you have to navigate to the folder that has your pip executable. Okay, so for me, that's going to be, I need to go to the C drive. This is in program files. Python is where I installed this. And then I called it Python with the number that we were on. And pip is always, so Python 3.10 is where I told it to install Python whenever I went through the installation process. It always installs with a scripts folder, okay? And that's where pip is, okay? So if I come in here and I say, all right, and we need PyDataset, it can't find that module. So I'm going to say pip install PyDataset. Fingers crossed here, this is going to work the way that I expect. So it's just going out to the internet now, getting that library and installing it on my machine, okay? And there we go. Now we should have PyDataset in here. And I'm just going to tell it to retry this. Let's see. Hopefully that's going to work. I don't know. I should have tried this beforehand, but we'll see. Okay. And there we go. We've got a looks like we've got our data set called DF. We called it DF, and we've got our iris data in there, right? So it's like super simple. We got 2 lines of code, and we've got access to data, sample data that's in a library. So that is one of the ways. So, and I could, transform this data if I wanted to. I'll come in here and say transform, and if I needed to, do any Power Query transformations on it, whatever, I'm going to rename it and call this the iris data set. And we will close and load this. And the next thing that I'll show you is connecting to a JSON data set. So GitHub is a place I love going to for all kinds of different reasons, but one of the things that you can get there are curated data sets, right? And so one that I found, and I literally, I came out and I said GitHub data sets, okay? And here we go. Like, there's the very first result here is awesome public data sets, right? We could probably go out there and find some JSON data that we wanted to work with. The one that I found was this US macroeconomic data, and I'm going to delete this so that I can show you guys how I pulled it in. Actually, oh no, it was movies. So we can go, let's just go take a look at this site really quick. Show you what the raw data looks like on GitHub. So I just found this movie data set, and that is pretty ugly, right? But I can plug this pandas read JSON into Power BI, and it's just going to read that data right into our model. So I'm going to say, okay, let's get rid of that. And I'll just create another one of these. Let's see. So I'm going to go back, say get data. And choose Python script again whenever that pops up for us. Okay. And I'll just rename this Python or GitHub Movies 2. Okay, so again, it's that pandas library, and there is a method on that called read JSON that'll just read that URL. So, for you guys at Dolese, I heard that you said ODOT has a new API that you could connect to. This could be possibly something that you could use Python to connect to the ODOT API. There may be an easier way to do it with an existing connector, but if not, this could be an option for you. And so there you go. You can see we've got movies that are going back to literally the year 1900. Maybe there's not a date associated with those. I don't know. 1901 though. I didn't know they were making movies back then, but apparently so. And it's that simple. So that is using Python as a data source, okay? So the other way that I told you you can use Python in Power BI is to create new and interesting visuals that don't just come out of the box, right? And so this is an example of what's called a swarm plot. And I got the idea to use this from a Guy in a Cube. I don't know if you all are familiar with him. I love Guy in a Cube videos. And so he went through and was talking about, this is the exact one that he did. And so I literally followed the steps that he had on there. And there was a couple of things that I had to tweak to get it to work on my machine. His was a little bit different. But let's take a look at this Python visual right here. And you can see that I've got a little bit of code in here, right? So I had to say, this was a case where I imported the data from the Seaborn library. So it was a Python library that had a sample data set in it, right? So I said, okay, I need to import Seaborn. And then I need to import matplotlib pyplot. And this is where I got tripped up on Patrick's video. Whenever he did this, he had given the alias to matplotlib as something weird. And, you know, whenever he was calling it down here, he was saying like pit.show. I was like, wait, you didn't define pit anywhere. So in any case, whenever you're ready to show your visual, you've got to have this matplotlib show method kind of at the end of this, right? But literally all I did was I came in here and I didn't even need this line 9. This was just some stuff that I did to kind of start making it look better. Line 10 is where all of the magic happened. I said, so SNS is my alias for Seaborn. So I said SNS swarm plot. And then on the x-axis, I put, here's our tips data set from Seaborn. In order to access these fields in the visual, I had to pull them into the fields well here. So you can see I've got payer gender, and then I have tip percent. I thought that this was kind of neat. Tip percent is actually a calculated column that I created in Power BI. So it doesn't just work on the data itself. Like I created a new calculated column in Power BI and I was able to use that in my Python visual, which I thought was pretty cool. I'm curious if you could do the same thing with a measure. I haven't tried that yet. But you can see I pulled in, you know, who's paying, their gender and the percentage of that tip. And then I just put those on the X and Y axis. So I've got, you know, the gender and the percent. This size here controls the size of your dots on that plot. And then the last thing that you have to do is for data, I just put data set. The reason that you use data set is because this script right here runs before anything else in your visual, okay? And so they're calling your data set right here. They're creating a generic name for it, data set, right? So whenever I'm telling swarm plot what data to use, we just have to use that variable that they create, okay?
Okay, to get it commented out.
This part up here, yeah, it is.
This is going to be executed.
Exactly. Yep, that's exactly right. The question was, does it matter that it's commented out up here at the top? No, it does not matter. This is strictly to show you this code is going to be executed before anything else that you write. But then you hit your play button here and you can, minimize that so that you have some more room here. And there is your scatter plot, right? And the cool thing about this is now performance is not the greatest, but I can click on Saturday and I can start to see my Python visuals thinking up here. And so it will update. We still have cross highlighting, cross filtering. Unfortunately, it doesn't work the other way. So my Python visual, I can't go click on one of these and it filters my other visual on the page. But still pretty cool that we can create this custom visual and then go in and start using some of the out of the box visuals to do the cross highlighting or cross filtering. So yeah. If you're using a supported package, it should. Now, that's based on documentation. I haven't tested that out myself. The question was, I think the cross-highlighting and cross-filtering still work when you publish to the service? And so I believe so. Again, as long as you are using one of the supported packages in your visual, okay? If you're using something outside of these, it may not work, okay? That, folks, is Python and Power BI. We've got a way to use it as a data source. We've also got a way to use it to create new and interesting visuals. Any questions or anything else you'd like to see here? Yeah. So, yeah, it doesn't look like it supports tooltips right here. I'm looking in our visualizations pane. I do have it selected, and we aren't getting any kind of like hover tooltips or anything, which is unfortunate, right? It's possible. I think that if it were going to support tooltips, we would see that over in the visualizations pane. But again, I see the use case for Python as a visual in Power BI being, okay, I've created maybe a cool clustering algorithm, and I want to go ahead and display that on a scatter plot, right? Well, we've got a scatter plot in Power BI, but I can't use that clustering algorithm in that built-in scatter plot. What I could do is build a scatter plot in Python and then, use that as a visual in Power BI. And I'll still have some cross filtering that I can do with some out-of-the-box visuals on that Python visual. Anything else? Is this sparking the imagination at all? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What I'm curious about is essentially just a matter of
Ooh, yeah, that is a really good question. Is there an advantage to using R in Power BI versus Python? Yeah, other than just the language itself. I can't think of any off of the bat. I really can't. But I also haven't played around with using R in Power BI yet either. Was your experience similar in that you install R and then you have to have the package or the library installed, right? And it's kind of the same thing. You can use it as a data source or as a visual.
I'm not sure if it is.
Okay.
It's very similar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. That may be. Yeah.
But it's not using.
Of our packages. Yeah. I can't, again, I'm still pretty green on using these features in the tool myself. So yeah, outside of, I think, your comfortability with the language, R may have some libraries, or I think in R they call them packages. It's kind of a one-to-one thing, that have some built-in data that is better than some of the Python data. One of the things that I'm looking forward to exploring some more is this Pi data sets. So this one right here, Pi data set, as you can see here, we've got a bunch of different data sets that we could come in here and start looking at. And so this is one that I'm really looking forward to starting to explore a little bit more personally. So yeah, good question. Something to look into for sure. Mhm. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. So the comment was that, R was purpose built for statistical analysis, and that is, you are absolutely spot on with that. I will say that Python being open source, R is open source as well, but Python has, and I'm no expert on R, okay, but I would venture to say that everything that you can do in one language, you can do in the other. So it's really a matter of which one are you more comfortable with. Yes. Yep. May be the way to go. Yeah. Yep. Cool. Well, I will wrap it up there then if there aren't any other questions. Thank you all so much.
Thanks a lot, Jeremy.
Yeah.
One comment I wanted to make that you mentioned, I'm glad you pointed that out about Python and APIs. I had not thought about that limitation. But I do know there's some excellent ways of accessing APIs with Power Query M, the part that's built into Power BI. And actually, if you wouldn't mind, since you've got it pulled up, if you don't transform data, I could see like having a source step that talked to that API.
Mhm.
And then you can feed that into a Python transformation, step, right?
Yeah.
Or script. So you could, even if, Microsoft's kind of like, well, we don't know what all is going on inside the Python step. So we can't, we don't want to trust it to just talk to any API. I think that has to do with like, they don't want it sending data out, right? It could stream your data in and start sending it to Putin or whoever, right? And so, well, okay, we all agree we don't want that. Anyway, so, yeah, so that, then you could have a source step that was talking to the API and then feed that into a Python.execute, step that would work with that, feed into that. So anyway, just an idea of how to access that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's it. You got to kind of get around that limitation, but still use Python in the service for as much as you can. All right, so the moment you've all been waiting for is here, lunches. And we're probably gonna stop our live stream and we'll get this recording up on YouTube for later for reference. So it's Chick-fil-A in the back. There is fruit and salads, chicken nuggets with different kinds of sauces. So hopefully, if you're all vegetarian, you've got some good options there and some grilled chicken sandwich options. I think, guys, we have plenty. If there are other Dolese folks who, after we go through, if they want to, stop in and get some lunch, it's probably fine. But yeah, please help yourselves and mingle, socialize. We'll start back up at 1 o'clock. Well, the only thing I'd ask is if you haven't yet written down your hot seat question, burning question of Power BI, please consider what that is. And I'll pass some pens out next to that so you can get that. Joyce, where do you want the hot seat? Oh yeah, if you'll put them up, maybe up here on the front.
Yeah. That's. It's material. Oh, cool. Yeah. I have not, but I can go occasionally watch it. It's doing way for 2 hours. It's easy. It's I have
And I'm the director. I had a pretty good We were talking about yeah, what's all this? Oh. Oh. Your actual job. Did you have a question? I'll try to send it. Yes. Right, so the first set, yeah. Okay. Yeah, or they can say, but. Oh. Yeah. Yes. I don't think it was very.
So when were you? Okay, so still very silent. You're very much. And really. It is. Yeah, except everything. If people is really
How about if I say, also here, that's easier. Okay.
Mm-mm.